morning. I'm Edgar Fernandez. I'm chairing today's Eden Chief Delegate meeting. I'm joined by Chuck McDonald, Gracie Lau, Brock Pierce, and Michael O'Sullivan. Today's agenda, I will share very quickly that we need to get through. 1 second here, please. Any individual updates, each CD is welcome to forego their minute. I made it a little shorter today. We're going to review the Vote Eden RFP that Chuck McDonald set out and the selection. Then we're going to discuss the payment options for vendors and executing the partners that we will be relying on for the July 9th election. We'll also discuss preparing for that and the Eden repository. And finally, we can conclude with some thoughts around membership services and circles. With that, we'll stop my share. And if anyone would like to provide a 1 minute quick update, if not, they can forgo that and we can continue the meeting.
Just quick update on my end. Token balance has not changed. Obviously, as we're nearing the end of our term, I will either be allocating those tokens to Pomelo Season 3 or contributing to one or more circles. I've spent a bunch of time working through Haifa DAO and thinking about partnership circles, which we'll discuss later.
Thanks, Brock. Chuck?
There's a lot of stuff going on in the community, regular meetings, some circles beginning, you could say, the Wednesday meetings using the fractally ranking of contributions scheme. That's working out really well. We're now distributing NFTs on that. Everybody's getting liquid EOS on that, and everybody's getting Eden tokens. And there are a lot of good, healthy discussions on the direction, feedback for the chief delegates in the direction that we've been taking. And there's anticipation of the election. So yeah, go.
Thanks, Chuck.
Very quickly from
Michael.
my side. So I've been working on, I developed and wrote the Eden members proposal, had help from others. That's out in the public domain for people to review. And obviously been working with you guys, just trying to get the election sorted, making the relevant changes to the contracts and picking the relevant teams, and debating that with all of you fine people.
Thank you. Gracie?
We hosted a few meetings with the community this week about the future of Eden and about the Eden supported project. And we want everything to be more transparent, and we hope the community can be more involved. And one more thing, we are working on Eden code GitHub management, not only the code of the Eden system, but also the project supported by Chinese Eden. We are guiding the team to be open source as request and hope the case base we are trying to build will help the new devs get started on EOS easier and faster. Thank you.
Excellent. On my end, this week we prepared the multi-sig transactions, one to transfer the active and owner keys of the .eden namespace, which is now under the control of these CDs, which would be transferred after the next election. Also, multi-sig transferring the active and owner keys of Genesis.eden. Both would be set at a threshold of 4 or 5. That should be executed momentarily. So that's what we've been working on this week. Also on testing the different smart contract code changes necessary to run the July 9th election. With that, I think we can move to the first item on the agenda, or official item, reviewing the Vote Eden RFP and that selection. Chuck, do you want to just quickly summarize the RFP and the responses we received?
Yes. Do you have that document to put up, or? Anyway, the request for proposals was for an individual to take responsibility for the Eden election. And I don't think we used the word circle, but it was essentially to, let me just get it up here. It was to take responsibility for the management and execution of the election day and things leading up to it, as well as produce a document which would be a summary of everything that had to happen for the election. So post-mortem, as well as basically a owner's manual for the election. And that went out. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, and it was okay. Here we go. It was published on June 21st. And the overview: Eden requires someone to take responsibility to operate and document the next Eden election and to prepare Eden to run elections in the future as required. It was general, but very detailed. And at the end, please include with your application a quote for your services to perform this work. At this time, only Eden members will be considered for the position. And I received 3 emails saying that they had proposals. The first was from Dario Cesaro, which contained a link to EOS's grant application to the ENF. EOS supports grant application to the ENF to do the work of updating the code, providing infrastructure for that work, and running the election. The second submission was from Dominic Thomas. It contained a scope of work for the election and a resume, his resume. And the third was from Glover Navarro, and it contained a scope of work submission for the code updates, the election work, and further code updates. And so I prepared a report which will be shared with the community after this meeting, and it's essentially the overview of the process. We're really, as Brock just noted off camera, we are spending a lot of time trying to do things with setting procedures in motion effectively, and yeah, we're trying to be transparent and open with this, and we really need Eden members to play along, just play the game, just cooperate with the procedures that we're trying to lay out, because we're doing it in good faith. So that's what I received. I prepared the report, and we've all read the report and gone over it, and gone over the related submissions, and that's it. Take it away, Edgar.
Thanks, Chuck. Anyone who want to add anything to the RFP description that was sent? Any other submissions that we've sent? If not, I can summarize.
I don't want to add anything. I just want to thank Chuck for putting all of this huge amount of work in. It's been quite a difficult situation and stressful. So I just really want to thank you for really going the extra mile in this, really building these processes for the next CDs in the future. I know it's been a bit tense and stuff, but honestly, really from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for making sure this all happened. It was a lot of work. We really appreciate it. So thank you, Chuck.
Yeah, I second that. Thank you, Chuck. And hopefully, this identifies the need to have kind of a procurement circle, or a, whether that's a pitch circle or a partnership circle, but the ability to contract services or to find the correct vendors to do the work that's important for Eden. So Chuck, thanks again for taking that responsibility. We've reviewed each of those selections and decided and would motion to accept Dominic's proposal to lead the selection on July 9th, and accept that proposal, and also to include the ability for EO support to support him in that endeavor, and to invoice for that work. Now, that's the conclusion we've reached. If anyone else wants to add or support that, but that's the selection of these CDs. We thank everyone who submitted proposals. We encourage them to do so, and I think by setting a lead on this election, considering the tight time constraint, but also including the support of others, not only brings us together, but also highlights the urgency and the need for everybody to kind of contribute and to do as much in this short time frame that we have. And hopefully we can do this with more lead time in the past. But that is the selection that we wanted to communicate today. Chuck, Michael, Gracie, Brock, Good. Okay. So
Yeah.
in that sense, we also will be communicating individually, but that Dominic's proposal or selection of this RFP, considering as well all the great work that EO Support has done, and hopefully they would support us into the election coming up this Saturday. As the next point, not only.
Sorry, Edgar, it's Saturday week. It's not this Saturday. It's Saturday, 9th of July.
Correct. Good point. Saturday the 9th. So that goes on the vote.eden. On the tech side and the code changes that are needed to update the smart contract, update the repository of Eden, and reflect that in the UI. Just to summarize, there was an RFP earlier on in this term for the tech.lead. There is one submission, which I was the one who was selected for that point, leading a team, assembling a team to scope the work, budget the work, and find out what the market would demand for this. That work was done by myself and by the Adenia Tech team, where we submitted a proposal to do that work and setting a budget that's acceptable for that work and recommended to the CDs as a tech lead. Inside of that, we received a proposal from EDAO out of a team that has worked on the Eden CN community. That was inside of that has now provided transparency into a contract that's already running on mainnet with the changes that these CDs are requiring to be in line with the bylaws. So we are motioning to select EDAO to do those code changes under the supervision of the tech lead, and making sure that that code review is appropriate and in line with what the bylaws are currently asking for. So on the tech side, those code changes, we should be able to implement as soon as possible. Actually, as we speak right now, we're getting the authority or the key transfer from the current holders of Genesis.eden or the smart contract on mainnet to be able to push that update. So we'll be able to execute that key chain shortly, if not right after this call, and then update that contract. Any comments on the tech.eden circle and the selection and the team responsible, one, for executing those changes, and two, for reviewing and proposing that those changes be accepted by this body?
Just briefly, just like with Edgar, with Chuck, I just want to thank you, Edgar, and EDAO and Gracie as well for kind of just doing the work without any, agreed remuneration in place or any contracts, just going ahead, making sure the work was done to make sure this election went ahead. And that was really bold and brave of you all, and I really thank you for that. And also for making sure that the permissions were handled, the smart contract, various bits and bobs were done on that with handing the permissions over, and I know you had to do a couple of different drafts as well, so that was obviously very time consuming. So just like a big thank you for pushing that through and making sure that we actually got the permissions and we can actually fulfill and ratify the bylaws that were proposed in the first term. So thanks for that, and great work.
Thank you, Michael. If we would like to try again to do this live, we would be able to execute that multi-sig if we want to try.
Let's try.
We can do that. Do that. No promises here since this is live, but I will share that if you guys can see this. Oops, wrong button. Hold on. So that is the earliest execution of multi-sig that sets the Genesis.eden active and owner keys with threshold of 4 to the different CDs currently, as well as the transfer of 10 EOS indicating that the ENF supports the new bylaws enacted. So we will try and do this and hope and cross our fingers that we can execute.
So not only did we do all this, but we also secured more funding from the ENF.
So that is done. That is done. So
awesome.
We can check this transaction, but the permissions should now be set to the current CDs from the old owners. These are the people that approved And we can now say that this is a new turning of the page in Eden and the independence provided to us. We take that responsibility wholeheartedly, with clear eyes and full hearts, and looking for a successful election. We've got a lot to discuss, but that's great that we've been able to do that. Now this puts us in the position to push updates to the contract that will then reflect in the UI, and reflect the changes that have now been proposed and ratified in our bylaws. Great.
That was just a little joke on my part there. Just to interrupt, we secured the funding of 10 EOS from the network on top of that, in that part of that transaction.
Wonderful. As they say, 10 EOS we didn't have prior to this. So there is the transaction hash. If you'd like to share with the community, I will share that also in our Telegram chat. But congratulations on the entire community. That's a big milestone. Moving on in the agenda. So how are we going to pay these vendors? That is one thing that we've already tested. You cannot just pull funds directly from Genesis.Eden, even though we have those permissions now. So we're asking the selected vendors, eDAO, Dominic, and any time and materials that EOS support does or does not provide, to issue invoices, and that would be remunerated either directly from the ENF or through our allocations. So we wanted to grab some time to discuss this, and make it clear that we're able to honor those commitments. Again, Eden at this point is not in a position to contract work, right? We're not in a position to commit to any obligation, right? Simply what we're doing is we're recommending that these vendors are the ones who do the work that Eden needs, that would be compensated by the ENF. Am I correct in that statement? Right.
One question, is it fair to say that this is Eden Independence Day?
It's the day that we receive, that the CDs receive the permissions to update the contract as they wish. So yes, in a sense, we are now we've proposed, ratified bylaws, and now are in the position to change that, which we should do as soon as possible.
It's a good name.
Okay, so we could say June 30th is Eden Independence Day, or are we talking July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th? Like, when do we think that day is?
Well, if you want to talk about transition of power from one to the other, I think the key transfer would represent that. Now, if you want to talk about the first time you execute that power, well, that would probably be with the updating of the contract. You know, in seeing that this is 4th of July weekend in the United States, we'd have to consult with historians whether the declaration itself was the Independence Day or the day that you know, the Revolutionary War was considered.
It's Canada Day,
right?
tomorrow too, buddy.
Perfect. Great to know. So with that end, I just want to make that clear, right? Eden is not entering into obligations. It's not entering into a contract. We're not being vendors will not be invoicing Eden. We don't have that ability, right? What we're doing right now is recommending that the ENF honor those contracts or those statements of work that Eden is requiring. Now, whether that gets funded by ENF, but we're confident that that would be the case. Anything else we want to discuss around payment options for vendors or how they should proceed? We'll do that. I will communicate that clearly, but I did want to make sure that this is no indication that we're entering into any obligation from Eden, and rather recommending that the ENF honor that work that needs to be done.
Do the vendors, do they need to seek approval from the ENF prior to sending an invoice? Or should they liaise directly with the ENF, or should they liaise with us?
That's a good question. I would recommend that each of the vendors send a pro forma invoice to us that then we pass along to the ENF for approval.
I would recommend directly sending to the ENF, given we're not an organization that can purchase anything.
I would agree that. Okay. So the ones that we're recommending can send a pro forma invoice for those works. And if the ENF requires our input, we will provide that. Clear? Everyone agreed? Great. Election preparation. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that that contract changes are tested and proven. I would recommend that there is a pull request made to the Eden repository to make sure that the current owners of that repository agree with those changes. And then a contract is proposed to update. That would then be signed by our newly acquired permissions to update that contract. So that's what needs to be done currently, right? So the EDAO team that's been now selected to do that would be the ones proposing changes to that repository and then proposing the contract update. The tech lead, myself, that has assigned Adenia to do this technical review, would do a code review, changes, ask any questions of the EDAO team, and then recommend to this body whether to update the contract or not. That's kind of the steps that we're laying out. Anyone have any comments or issues with that, or want to clarify any points?
Maybe just one point. So why do Fractally have to approve the changes to the GitHub pull request?
Good question. Right now, the Eden repository before was under Clarios, now is under GoFractally/Eden. That is the active repository. We could update the contract on chain, approve and sign that, and it wouldn't match what's in that repository. Right? However, in good order, the repository should match what's on chain and prevent any breaks there. Furthermore, I think that the team that had originally produced this code should, either review it and say, look, this pull request is is good to go. They may choose not to respond. They may choose not to merge that. They may choose to leave the contract in the repository as is, and we would then move to do it on chain and maybe have to fork their repository and create one new. But at this point, seeing as they're active Eden members, I think they're incentivized as well to make sure that the contract is abiding by the bylaws that have now been proposed and ratified, and that would want to have the repository updated correctly to match what's on chain. Gracie, anything to add on that?
Yes, I'm totally agree. Which should make sure the code is
perfect. Now, if the EDAO team makes a pull request that is not accepted, we'd ask why. And if for some reason it's not accepted with no justification, no reason, well, then we would have to then decide whether we fork their repository and point it to the current contract. Hopefully, it doesn't lead to that. I assume that might be a decision for the future CDs, to be honest. But so I don't want to assume that that's the next step we would take, but I think that's what we should do. All right, so that goes through the election preparation and the Eden repository. We have conclusions and confirming the chair for next meeting. That would be Brock. Any final thoughts? I know we also want to kind of propose a new circle for the new CDs to consider. So we might want to grab just minutes to discuss that.
Yep, I think we should.
Perfect. Well, I'll start, I guess. We've in the prior meeting, Brock brought out a great point of a another team, Hydra, that is working on
Haifa.
Haifa. I'm sorry, Haifa. That is working on interesting software for communities to organize in a decentralized manner, different tool sets. There are others that are doing the same, and we want to recommend that there's a circle, a partnership circle or a pitch circle that allows other teams to approach Eden with tools and software and communicates to them that we're open to that. And I think that's one of the great opportunities, not only Haifa, but other teams and other communities and other members that think that there are tools and software that we can consider, and how do we integrate that into what we're trying to do here. And I think that's a great initiative. I totally support it. So I think, we're specifically talking about that group because it was brought up by Brock in the last point. But by no means is it the only group that we want to listen to, especially if our membership is in touch or part of teams that are building tools for DAOs, for sub-DAOs, for blockchain-based organizations. We're always looking for integrating new software, new tools, and new ways to approach problems that we all have. So with that, I think that's an open invitation. Michael, Brock, Chuck, you want to add? Tracy?
I mean, yeah.
Do we want to go through the formalities of just making some motions and formally approving the things that we discussed? Because it sounds like there's a few approvals that should be made in there. One is making a motion to accept Dominic's proposal. I think we should just do that, right?
Perfect.
So I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Sure, seconded.
All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Okay, that passed unanimously. Any other motions that we need to make? Do we need to do the EDAO proposal as well? So I'll make another motion to approve the EDAO proposal. Do I have a second?
Yep, seconded.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, that is passed unanimously. Anything else we want to do just in terms of housekeeping and approvals before we move on? And I'll talk just briefly about Haifa and the proposal of, again, I'll just jump into that and let me know if we need any other votes. Spent a bunch of time focused on Haifa DAO, both at Helios Genesis with the team. And looks like their DAO in a box, their solution could be of great utility to us. So one of the things I'm proposing is that we look at building, I call it a partnership circle, as we look for service providers, vendors, infrastructure solutions to support to Eden. So anyone out there in the community that has anything, please bring it in. I would recommend we have a call with the Haifa team. They're excited about the prospects of providing a solution. And so I'd recommend we all get up to speed on this to see if we agree that this is a viable solution to really upgrade Eden. Upon my analysis, it looks like a viable solution, but let's see what else is out there and create a circle to support that. I think let's call this, we could call it an application circle instead of partnerships a little bit, I think unclear. This is really infrastructure, tools, platform. So if anyone has a preferred name for it, we'll call it apps. I think that's a good one, Chuck. Thank you. So I'm also proposing we create the apps.eden circle so that we can, we don't want to build everything ourselves. Ideally, we don't have to build anything. Ideally, we just have awesome solutions that we can just plug and play and everything rolls. So that's all I wanted to bring up now. Not sure we need to vote on that right now. I think next step is we've got a circle coming together. Let's engage and have a conversation. And that we've communicated that there's an invitation to anybody out there that's thinking it would like to participate in this app. We want to make sure to give people lead time. Chuck, do you want to add to the other?
Yeah, I agree. Apps.Eden probably makes sense because we're not at the pitches level, we're not at the partnerships level. This is just software that we want to play with and integrate it or not. And I think Apps.Eden works. We're thinking in terms of naming these what their EOS account name would be, their .Eden account, right? So I think we also need to talk about part of what we're doing is our recommendation for the new bylaws is we can only create a .Eden account with 2/3 plus majority of the chief delegates. So we need to vote on these, and I think that we could just vote on creating vote.eden, tech.eden, and media.eden. Those are our three cornerstones that we were talking about: the need for our technology updates, the need for our voting procedures, and the need for our official communications. And I think.
All right, Chuck, you want to just make that as a motion?
I make that as a motion, please. Yeah.
And did we want to add apps to that while we're doing this, or do we want to put that off?
I think we could also. If I can add one more thing, I think it would make a lot of sense to add NFT.Eden also.
I think let's go ahead and build. I don't think it hurts us to approve these now. They're just there.
Yeah.
So it would be a motion for those 5 sort of top level domains account creation.
So that's apps, vote, tech, media, and NFT.
Okay, Chuck, Michael has seconded.
Good.
I agree. I approve. All right, unanimous.
One last thought around these circles, and I wanted to get your guys' input, but maybe for the future CDs, consider that maybe one of these, each of these circles, one of the chief delegates should be part of that. Right. So we'll try, that's very common in kind of board of directors where there's certain subcommittees and committees. And in order for the chief delegates to know what's going on in NFT.Eden or apps.Eden or vote.Eden, and then communicate back to this body, it's always is good to have one of us sit there, right? Not necessarily be the lead, but actually sit in one of those circles. I know that there's only 5 chief delegates and there might be more circles, but I do kind of encourage that CDs, I know we have limited amount of time, but also try and sit and participate in one of these circles.
I think they're essentially welcome at every meeting of any subcommittee or any committee. So,
All right.
Yeah.
So if we wanted just to temporarily sort of take some leadership here, I'm happy to basically chair the apps committee for this next couple weeks, just because we've got I've been spearheading bringing a tool solution. Happy to do that if we want to just kind of divide these up right now and share these sort of subcommittees.
I'll take NFT.
I'll do
great. Well. Yeah, and I'm already on tech, so sounds good. I think.
Does that mean, Michael, you're on media and Gracie, you're on vote? Is that kind of how we're looking at this?
Somewhat. For the last ones, I think that makes a lot of sense.
All right, so we've created these things. We're all sharing a piece of it. It's only for a couple of weeks, but it gives us something to. We know that each one of these has a responsible party, an accountable, right? Party to know that things are not all orphaned. Okay, is there anything else we need to cover today? Because if we can wrap up, I'd love for us to be able to conclude as close to 10 as possible, and we're 10 minutes over on our regular time. Is there anything else we need to cover?
Yeah, just very
100.
As the chair of the media circle that's just been created, it's my duty to inform everyone that we need to get the vote out for the election. We've only got now, 9 days or whatever till the election. So I think, Brock, you have the biggest audience of anyone. So when you tweet and when you speak, people listen.
Yeah, Michael, let's just, I think you're in a chat with Chris Barnes and I. Yeah. Let's just get my whole team, and then I'll amplify and start getting that message out to the community.